Moving to Sunset Hills felt like a dream come true. The neighborhood looked like something from a magazine cover. Perfect lawns stretched as far as the eye could see. Every house was painted in approved earth tones. Every mailbox stood at exactly the same height. Every driveway was spotless. My wife Sarah and I had saved for years to afford this place. We wanted the best for our daughter Emma. At 8 years old, she deserved to grow up somewhere safe. Somewhere she could ride her bike without worry. Somewhere she could just be a kid. Emma fell in love with our new home immediately. She spent hours in the front yard, drawing with sidewalk chalk and riding her bright pink bicycle up and down our quiet street. Her laughter echoed through the pristine suburban air. For the first time in years, I felt like we had made the right choice. The neighbors seemed friendly enough at first. They waved when we passed. They smiled during our evening walks. Everything appeared normal on the surface, but I started noticing small things that made me uneasy. There were rules, lots of rules. The grass could not grow higher than 2.5 inches. Garden decorations required written approval. Children's toys had to be stored out of sight by sunset. Garbage cans could only be placed on the curb between specific hours. Then I met Karen Williams. She knocked on our door exactly 1 week after we moved in. Karen was a tall woman in her 50s with short gray hair and cold blue eyes. She wore a beige blazer and carried a clipboard like it was a weapon. Her smile never reached her eyes. "Welcome to Sunset Hills," she said in a voice that sounded more like a warning than a greeting. "I am Karen Williams, president of the Homeowners Association. I need to discuss some issues with your property." I invited her inside, thinking this was a normal new neighbor visit. I was wrong. Karen walked through my home like she owned it. She pointed out scuff marks on the walls. She noted that our moving boxes were still visible through the front window. She mentioned that Emma's bicycle had been left on the lawn overnight, which violated Section 12 of the community standards. "The rules exist for a reason," Karen explained as she made notes on her clipboard. "Property values depend on maintaining standards. I trust you understand the importance of compliance." I nodded and smiled, trying to keep things friendly. "Of course, we just moved in. We are still getting settled." Karen's expression did not soften. "The settling period ended the day you signed your deed. I expect immediate improvements." After she left, I found myself standing in my own living room feeling like a stranger. This was supposed to be our safe haven, our fresh start. Instead, it felt like we had moved into a prison with invisible bars. Emma ran inside from the yard, her cheeks flushed from playing. "Daddy, who was that lady?" She kept staring at me while I was riding my bike. I knelt down and hugged my daughter. "Just a neighbor, sweetheart, nothing to worry about." But I was already worrying. There was something wrong with Karen Williams, something that went beyond strict rule enforcement. The way she had looked at Emma made my skin crawl. That night I stood at my bedroom window watching Karen walk slowly down the street. She stopped in front of every house, taking notes. Even in the darkness, I could see her cold eyes scanning for violations. I had no idea that this woman would soon become my worst nightmare, that her obsession with control would eventually put my daughter in mortal danger, that I would be forced to become someone I never thought I could be. The perfect neighborhood was about to reveal its true face. The harassment started small. A formal letter about our lawn being 3 inches tall instead of 2.5. A $50 fine for leaving Emma's chalk art on the sidewalk overnight. A written warning about our garden hose being visible from the street. I tried to comply with everything. I bought a ruler to measure our grass. I stored Emma's toys in the garage every evening. I moved our welcome mat 2 inches to the left because Karen said it was not properly centered. But nothing was ever good enough. "Daddy, why do we have to put my bike away every night?" Emma asked as I wheeled her bicycle into the garage. "Tommy across the street gets to leave his outside." I did not have a good answer. Karen seemed to target our family specifically while ignoring similar violations from other neighbors. It felt personal, but I could not understand why. The monthly HOA meeting was held in the community center. I decided to attend, hoping to address Karen's excessive enforcement directly. Maybe we could work things out like reasonable adults. I was wrong. The meeting was a sad display of grown adults cowering before Karen's authority. She sat at the head of a folding table, reading violation reports like criminal charges. One by one, neighbors apologized for minor infractions and promised to do better. Mrs. Peterson was fined for planting flowers without approval. Mr. Chen received a warning for his dog barking during authorized quiet hours. The Johnsons were threatened with legal action for their teenage son's car being parked on the street overnight. When my turn came, I stood up calmly. I would like to discuss the enforcement process. Some of these violations seem excessive for a community trying to maintain neighborly relationships. The room went silent. Karen's cold eyes locked onto mine. "Mr. Davidson," she said, pronouncing my name like it tasted bitter. "Are you questioning the authority of this board?" "I am questioning the fairness," I replied. "My daughter is 8 years old. Fining families for children's chalk art seems unreasonable." Karen stood up slowly. "Children who cannot follow rules grow into adults who cannot follow rules. Perhaps you should teach your daughter about respect for community standards." The other neighbors avoided eye contact. I realized they were all terrified of this woman. She had turned a homeowners association into her personal kingdom of fear. After the meeting, Mrs. Peterson approached me in the parking lot. She looked around nervously before speaking. "You need to be careful," she whispered. "Karen does not forget challenges to her authority. The Hendersons used to live in your house. They fought her too." "What happened to them?" "She made their lives miserable until they moved. Constant fines, surprise inspections, harassment. She has ways of making people leave." I drove home that night feeling sick to my stomach. We had bought our dream house in what turned out to be a nightmare neighborhood, but moving again was not an option. We had invested everything in this place. Emma was already asleep when I got home. I stood in her doorway watching her peaceful face. She had no idea that her simple joy in riding her bike and drawing with chalk had somehow made us enemies of the HOA president. The next morning, I found a formal letter taped to our front door. Karen was scheduling a property inspection for the following week. She wanted to examine our backyard, garage, and interior spaces for compliance violations. "She cannot just search our house," Sarah said, reading the letter over breakfast. "According to the HOA contract we signed, she can," I replied. "We agreed to periodic inspections when we bought the place." Emma looked up from her cereal. "Is the mean lady coming to our house again?" My heart broke a little. My 8-year-old daughter should not have to worry about mean ladies. She should be thinking about cartoons and playground games and what snacks to pack for school. "Do not worry about her, sweetheart," I said. "Daddy will handle everything." But I was beginning to realize that handling Karen Williams might require more than polite conversation and rule compliance. This woman had declared war on my family for reasons I could not understand. I started keeping detailed records of every interaction, every letter, every fine, every conversation. If Karen wanted to play games, I would make sure I had documentation of her behavior. I had no idea how much I would need that evidence later, or how far Karen was willing to go to assert her control over my family. The war was just beginning. Karen's behavior became increasingly strange over the following weeks. I would catch glimpses of her standing across the street, taking photographs of our house with a digital camera. She would write notes on her ever-present clipboard, documenting things that seemed completely normal. The photographs were not random. She took pictures of Emma's bike in our driveway, pictures of our garbage cans on collection day, pictures of Emma herself playing in our front yard. "Daddy, why does that lady keep taking pictures of me?" Emma asked one afternoon as we worked in our garden together. I looked up to see Karen standing on the sidewalk, camera raised in our direction. When she saw me watching, she did not even try to hide what she was doing. She took one more photo and walked away. "I do not know, honey," I told Emma, "but stay close to the house when you play outside, okay?" That evening, I called the police non-emergency line to ask about harassment laws. The officer was polite but not particularly helpful. "Has she threatened you directly?" he asked. "Not exactly, but she is taking photographs of my daughter without permission. If she is standing on public property, she has the right to take pictures. Unless she makes specific threats, there is not much we can do." I hung up feeling frustrated. The law was not designed to protect families from people like Karen. Her behavior was clearly obsessive and inappropriate, but she was careful to stay within legal boundaries. The violation letters became more frequent and more bizarre. Karen cited us for having our window blinds closed during daylight hours, claiming it created an unwelcoming appearance. She fined us for Emma's sidewalk chalk being the wrong shade of pink. She demanded we remove a small American flag from our mailbox because it was not an approved decoration. I tried to research legal options, but lawyers cost money we did not have. The consultation fees alone would strain our budget. Meanwhile, Karen's fines were adding up quickly. She charged $50 for each violation, and she was finding new violations every few days. "We cannot keep paying these ridiculous fines," Sarah said as we reviewed our monthly budget. "She is costing us hundreds of dollars." "I know, but if we do not pay, she can put a lien on the house." The stress was affecting our entire family. Sarah started getting headaches from the constant worry. Emma asked more questions about why the mean lady did not like us. I found myself watching the windows, waiting for Karen's next appearance on our street. Then came the day that everything changed. I was inside making lunch when I heard Emma screaming. Not the playful shriek of a child having fun, but a cry of real terror. I dropped everything and ran outside. Karen was standing in our front yard, towering over Emma, who had fallen off her bicycle. My daughter was crying, looking up at this tall stranger who had somehow appeared while she was playing. "What are you doing in my yard?" I demanded, moving quickly to Emma's side. Karen did not seem surprised by my anger. If anything, she looked pleased by the confrontation. "Your daughter was riding her bicycle on the sidewalk in an unsafe manner," Karen said calmly. "I was preventing an accident." "By doing what exactly?" I told her to stop. She became startled and fell over. Perhaps if you taught her proper bicycle safety, this would not have happened. I helped Emma to her feet, checking her for injuries. She had scraped her knee, but she was more frightened than hurt. "Emma, go inside and get cleaned up," I said gently. "I need to talk to this lady." After my daughter went inside, I turned to face Karen with barely controlled rage. "Do not ever approach my child again," I said. If you have issues with our family, you talk to me directly. Karen smiled coldly. Your child is a member of this community. Community standards apply to all residents, regardless of age. She is 8 years old enough to learn respect for rules. Get off my property, now. Karen made one final note on her clipboard before leaving. As she walked away, she called back over her shoulder. Continued non-compliance will have consequences, Mr. Davidson, for your entire family. That night I could not sleep. Karen's threat replayed in my mind over and over. Consequences for my entire family. What did that mean? How far was she willing to go? I should have called the police that night. I should have demanded they file a report about Karen threatening my family. I should have started the process of getting a restraining order. Instead, I told myself that she was just a bitter woman who got satisfaction from exercising petty authority. I convinced myself that her threats were empty bluster. I was wrong, and my failure to take action would nearly cost my daughter her life. The morning of August 15th started like any other summer day. Emma was excited because her friend Ashley was coming over to play. She had spent the early morning setting up a sidewalk chalk obstacle course in our driveway, complete with hopscotch squares and racing lanes. "Look, Daddy," she called as I brought my coffee outside. "I made a bike track for me and Ashley." I smiled watching my daughter's enthusiasm. Despite everything Karen had put us through, Emma still found joy in simple pleasures. Her resilience amazed me every day. "That looks fantastic, sweetheart. Just remember to stay in our driveway and front yard, okay?" "I will, Daddy." The morning passed peacefully. Emma and Ashley rode their bikes through the chalk course, laughing and competing to see who could complete it fastest. For a few hours, I forgot about HOA violations and harassment letters. I just enjoyed watching my daughter be a normal kid. Then I saw Karen's silver sedan turning onto our street. She drove slowly, deliberately, like a predator stalking prey. She parked directly across from our house and sat in her car for several minutes, writing on her clipboard. I could see her cold eyes watching Emma and Ashley through her windshield. I felt my stomach tighten. Karen had never come to our street during the day before. Her inspections were usually conducted in the early morning or evening hours. Something was different about this visit. She finally got out of her car and walked directly toward our property. She was wearing her usual beige blazer and carrying her clipboard like a weapon. Her face showed no emotion, but I could sense the tension radiating from her body. "Mr. Davidson," she called as she approached our driveway, "we need to discuss immediate violations." Emma and Ashley stopped playing and watched nervously as Karen walked onto our property. I moved to position myself between the HOA president and the children. "What violations?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Karen gestured toward the sidewalk chalk. "Unauthorized markings on community pavement. The sidewalk is not your personal property." "It is sidewalk chalk. It washes away with rain." "Community standards prohibit defacing public surfaces. This requires immediate cleanup and a fine of $200. I felt my patience finally snap. Months of harassment, threats, and escalating demands had pushed me beyond my breaking point. "Are you serious? You are going to fine us for children's sidewalk chalk?" "The rules apply to everyone," Karen replied coldly, "including children who should know better." She is 8 years old enough to learn respect. Emma had stopped playing entirely now. She stood behind her bike, watching the adult argument with wide, frightened eyes. This was exactly what I had been trying to protect her from. Karen was poisoning my daughter's sense of safety in her own home. "You need to leave," I said firmly, "right now." Karen's expression changed. For the first time, I saw genuine anger flash across her face. "I am the president of this homeowners association," she said, her voice rising. "You do not get to dismiss me from community property. This is my driveway, my property, get out. Your property ends at the sidewalk. These violations extend onto community space." The argument escalated quickly. Months of suppressed frustration poured out as we faced each other in my driveway. Karen's mask of professional authority finally slipped, revealing the bitter, controlling person underneath. "You people think you can move into this neighborhood and ignore the standards we have worked to maintain," she shouted. "Your daughter has no respect for rules. Your family has no respect for this community. My family deserves to live without harassment. Your family deserves exactly what you have earned through non-compliance." Emma started crying. The shouting had scared her. She dropped her bicycle and ran toward me, seeking protection from the angry adults. "Daddy, I want to go inside," she sobbed. That was when Karen made the decision that would change everything. Instead of continuing the argument, she turned and walked back toward her car. I thought she was leaving. I thought the confrontation was over. I was wrong. Karen got into her silver sedan and started the engine. But instead of driving away, she put the car in drive and pressed the accelerator. Hard. The car lurched forward, heading directly toward me. Emma saw the danger before I did. She ran from the safety of our front steps, trying to reach me, trying to help her father. She ran directly into Karen's path. The impact happened in slow motion. I watched helplessly as 2,000 pounds of metal struck my 8-year-old daughter. The sickening sound of the collision. Emma's small body flying through the air. The terrible silence that followed. When Emma hit the pavement, something inside me died, and something else was born, something dark and violent and completely justified. Karen had just made the biggest mistake of her life. Time stopped as I ran to Emma's broken body. She was lying motionless on the asphalt, her legs twisted at unnatural angles. Blood was pooling beneath her small frame. Her eyes were closed. She was not moving. "Emma, baby, can you hear me?" I knelt beside her, afraid to move her but desperate to help. "Emma, please answer Daddy." Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and filled with pain. "Daddy, it hurts." "I know, sweetheart, Daddy is here. You are going to be okay." I pulled out my phone to call 911, my hands shaking so badly I could barely dial. That was when I heard Karen's voice behind me. "Well, maybe next time she will watch where she is going." I turned around slowly, not believing what I had just heard. Karen was standing beside her car, brushing dirt off her blazer like she had just stepped in a puddle. She was looking down at my injured daughter with the same cold expression she used for HOA violations. "What did you just say?" Karen met my eyes without flinching. Children need to learn consequences for their actions. Perhaps this will teach her to follow rules. Something inside my brain snapped. The civilized part of me, the part that believed in law and order and proper channels, simply ceased to exist. What remained was pure, primal fury. I stood up slowly, my whole body trembling with rage. "You just ran over my daughter with your car. She ran into my path. I was attempting to leave your property after being verbally assaulted. You accelerated toward us. I was leaving. The child should have stayed out of the way." Karen turned toward her car door, apparently planning to drive away from the scene. That was when I realized she felt no remorse whatsoever. She had just crippled an 8-year-old child and was treating it like a minor inconvenience. I reached her before she could get back into her car. My first punch caught her completely by surprise. She stumbled backward, dropping her clipboard. For the first time since I had known her, Karen Williams looked genuinely shocked. "You are crazy," she shouted, holding her hand to her bleeding nose. "I am calling the police." "Call them," I growled. "Tell them how you used your car as a weapon against a child." Karen tried to get around me to reach her car door. I blocked her path. She was not leaving this scene, not after what she had done to Emma. "Get out of my way," she demanded. "You cannot assault me. I can do whatever I want to someone who just tried to kill my daughter." Karen's eyes went wide with fear. She finally understood that her authority meant nothing here, that her threats and fines and clipboard were useless against a father protecting his child. She tried to push past me. I grabbed her arm and spun her around, slamming her against the side of her car. The clipboard fell to the ground, scattering violation notices across the pavement. "Please," she gasped. "I will drop all the fines. I will leave your family alone." Too late for that. I grabbed Corinne by the back of her head and slammed her face down onto the hood of her car. The metal made a hollow sound as her skull connected. She screamed and tried to pull away, but I was far stronger than her petite frame. I slammed her head down again, harder this time. The hood actually dented under the impact. Corinne's legs gave out, but I held her up, using her head like a hammer against her own vehicle. "This is for Emma," I said through gritted teeth, bringing her head down again. The hood was bending now, metal creaking under the repeated impacts. Corinne had stopped struggling, her body going limp in my grip. But I could not stop. Months of harassment, threats, and cruelty poured out through my hands. I thought about every violation letter, every ridiculous fine, every time Emma had asked why the mean lady did not like us. Every night I had lain awake worrying about what Corinne might do next. I brought her head down one final time with all the strength I could muster. The hood caved in completely, and Corinne's body went completely still. I released my grip and stepped back, breathing heavily. Corinne collapsed to the ground beside her destroyed car, blood covering her face and hair. She was alive but unconscious, her body crumpled like a broken doll. Behind me, I could hear Emma crying softly. The sound brought me back to reality. My daughter needed medical attention. She needed her father to be there for her, not standing over Corinne's broken body. I knelt back down beside Emma, taking her small hand in mine. "Help is coming, baby. Daddy is here." In the distance, I could hear sirens approaching. Someone had called 911. Soon there would be police and paramedics and questions I would have to answer. But for now, there was only my daughter, and the knowledge that the monster who had hurt her would never threaten my family again. Justice had been served, the only way it could be. The paramedics arrived within minutes, though it felt like hours. 2 ambulances pulled up to our house, followed quickly by 3 police cars. Our quiet suburban street suddenly looked like a crime scene. Emma was my only priority. I held her hand as the paramedics worked, checking her vitals and stabilizing her legs for transport. She was conscious but weak, her small voice barely audible above the chaos. "Daddy, am I going to be okay?" "Yes, sweetheart. The doctors are going to fix you up. Daddy will be right behind you." As they loaded Emma into the ambulance, a police officer approached me. Detective Martinez was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a patient demeanor. He had seen the scene and was trying to piece together what had happened. "Mr. Davidson, I need to ask you some questions. Can you tell me what led to this incident?" I gestured toward Karen, who was being loaded into the second ambulance. She was conscious now but barely coherent, blood still covering her face from where I had slammed her head against her car. "That woman has been harassing my family for months," I said. "Today she used her car to run down my 8-year-old daughter. Then she said Emma deserved it." Detective Martinez made notes as I spoke. "We will need to investigate both the vehicular assault and your response. Do you have documentation of the harassment you mentioned?" "Everything. Letters, emails, photographs. I have been keeping records since the day we moved in." Other neighbors had emerged from their houses, drawn by the sirens and commotion. To my surprise, several of them approached Detective Martinez voluntarily, offering to provide statements. Mrs. Peterson was the first to speak up. "Officer, I saw the whole thing. Karen Williams deliberately drove her car toward Mr. Davidson and his daughter. She has been terrorizing this neighborhood for years." Mr. Chen nodded in agreement. "Karen has made all of our lives miserable. She destroyed the Hendersons' marriage with her constant harassment. She threatened to have my dog removed from the neighborhood. She fined Mrs. Johnson $300 for her roses being the wrong shade of pink." One by one, neighbors who had been silent during months of HOA meetings came forward with their own stories of Karen's abuse. The picture they painted was of a woman who had used her position to wage psychological warfare against anyone who dared question her authority. "She told my teenage son that she would make sure no college would accept him if he did not comply with her rules," said Mrs. Taylor. "She threatened to report false drug activity to the police." Detective Martinez listened carefully to each account. "How long has this pattern of behavior been going on?" "Years," replied Mr. Peterson. "But it got worse after the Davidsons moved in. Karen saw them as a direct challenge to her control." Ashley's mother had also witnessed the entire incident. "I was watching from my window," she told the detective. "Karen Williams accelerated directly toward Mr. Davidson. The little girl was trying to help her father and ran into the path of the car. It was deliberate." As the investigation continued, a disturbing picture emerged. Karen had not just been enforcing HOA rules. She had been using her position to wage personal vendettas against residents who dared to resist her authority. The fines, threats, and harassment were all part of a systematic campaign of psychological abuse. The documentation I had been keeping became crucial evidence. Every letter, every email, every photograph I had taken of Karen stalking our property painted a clear picture of escalating harassment that had culminated in violence. Detective Martinez reviewed the files I provided. "This is extensive documentation of stalking and harassment behavior. Combined with witness testimony about the vehicular assault, we have a strong case." "What happens now?" I asked. "You will likely face charges for assault, but given the circumstances and witness testimony, I expect any charges to be minimal." Karen Williams, on the other hand, is facing attempted vehicular homicide charges. As I rode in the ambulance behind Emma, I felt a strange sense of peace. The monster who had terrorized my family was finally facing real consequences. The neighbors who had remained silent for years had finally found their voices. Most importantly, Emma was alive. Injured but alive. And Karen Williams would never threaten my family again. Emma spent 3 weeks in the hospital. Both of her legs were broken, requiring multiple surgeries to repair the damage Karen's car had caused. The doctors said she would make a full recovery, but it would take months of physical therapy. I never left her side during those first critical days. Sarah and I took turns sleeping in the uncomfortable hospital chair, reading stories and playing quiet games to keep Emma's spirits up. Despite everything she had been through, my daughter's resilience amazed me. "Daddy, when can I ride my bike again?" she asked one afternoon as we watched cartoons together. "Soon, sweetheart. The doctors say your legs are healing really well." "Will the mean lady be there when we go home?" "No, baby. She will never bother us again." The legal proceedings moved quickly. Karen was charged with attempted vehicular homicide, aggravated assault, and criminal harassment. The evidence against her was overwhelming. Witness testimony, my documentation, and security footage from a neighbor's camera all confirmed the same story. I was charged with simple assault, but my attorney was confident we could negotiate a plea deal given the circumstances. The district attorney understood that I had acted to protect my child in an extreme situation. The most surprising development came when other Karen victims started coming forward. Former residents who had moved away because of her harassment, current neighbors who had been too afraid to speak up, a pattern of abuse and intimidation that went back years. The Homeowners Association board held an emergency meeting to remove Karen from her position. It was unanimous. They also voted to implement new policies preventing any single person from wielding unchecked authority over residents. Mrs. Peterson was elected as the new HOA president. Her first act was to eliminate most of Karen's ridiculous rules and reduce fines to reasonable levels. "We want this to be a community where families can actually live," she announced at the meeting. "Not a prison where children are afraid to play outside." Karen's trial lasted only 2 days. Her attorney tried to argue self-defense, claiming she had been threatened and feared for her safety. The jury did not buy it. Witness testimony and video evidence clearly showed her deliberately accelerating toward my family. She was sentenced to 5 years in prison for attempted vehicular homicide and criminal harassment. She was also ordered to pay Emma's medical bills and emotional damages. During her sentencing hearing, Karen showed no remorse. She sat silently as victim after victim testified about the psychological damage she had caused. When given the opportunity to speak, she simply said she had been enforcing community standards. The judge was not impressed. "Ms. Williams, you used your position of authority to terrorize innocent families. Your actions nearly resulted in the death of a child. You have shown no remorse and no understanding of the harm you have caused." My own legal consequences were minimal. I received 2 years probation and community service. The judge acknowledged that while violence is never the ideal solution, my actions were understandable given the extreme circumstances. "Mr. Davidson," he said during my sentencing, "I am a father myself. I cannot say I would have acted differently in your situation." Emma made a full recovery. It took 8 months of physical therapy, but she was eventually able to run and ride her bike again. The first time she completed a full lap around our block on her bicycle, the entire neighborhood cheered. Our street became a real community after Karen's removal. Children played freely. Neighbors talked to each other without fear. The oppressive atmosphere that had hung over Sunset Hills lifted like fog in the morning sun. I learned that sometimes protecting your family requires crossing lines you never imagined you would cross. Sometimes the system fails, and ordinary people must take extraordinary action. Would I do it again, without hesitation? Karen Williams had declared war on my family. She escalated that war to the point of using her car as a weapon against my child. In that moment, I became exactly what she had forced me to become. a father who would do anything to protect his daughter. And I have never regretted it for a single second.